Call the meeting to order. If Carrie will call the roll, please.
Pat Roney?
Here.
Alan Ward?
Here.
Kathy Cox?
Here.
Nicole Cohen? Here. John Madsen?
Here. Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please join me in a moment of silence. I need a motion to review and accept the agenda for this session.
I make a motion we review and accept the agenda.
Second. Terry?
Pat Roney?
Yes.
Alan Ward?
Yes.
Kathy Cox?
Yes.
Nicole Cohen?
Yes.
John Madsen?
Yes. And I will entertain a motion to head to executive session.
I make a motion we move into executive session.
Seconded.
Point 1, discussion and possible appointment of Director of Personnel and Technology. I'll entertain a motion on 4.1.
I make a
You want to
motion
read it first?
we approve, yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm backwards today.
Okay.
that's okay.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, members of the board, the administration and superintendent would like to recommend that the governing board approve the appointment of Ms. Jamie Festadagel to the position of Director of Personnel and Technology. Can I read the rationale now, or you want me to wait for this motion?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right. I would like to read this because I would like to honor the experience and depth that Mrs. Daigle brings to it. Mrs. Festadagel brings 18 years of experience in education, 5 of which have been in high school administration, to the position of Director of Personnel and Technology. Mrs. Daigle started her career in 2000 as a high school ESL teacher in Phoenix. She joined the Lake Havasu Unified School District in 2001 as a middle school language arts teacher and subsequently moved to the high school. During her 11 years as a teacher at the high school, Jamie taught civics, AP, government, economics, dual enrollment government, macroeconomics, high school marketing, student government advisor. Her extensive background with law and the Constitution lay the foundation for the role in personnel. Mrs. Daigle has also been a high school online social studies teacher since 2005, during which time she has developed online curriculum, worked with students in both synchronous and asynchronous environments, and used Blackboard, Brightspace, and Illuminate platforms to instruct students. Her experience through the evolution of online teaching and learning will provide the understanding of instructional technology as a springboard for learning the tech side of our district. In 2013, Mrs. Daigle became an assistant principal at the high school, where she has had a variety of experiences in leadership during the last 5 years. These experiences include recruiting and hiring new staff, evaluating classified and certified staff, and both student and staff discipline and attendance. In addition, she has chaired several committees working with staff and has been a member of several district committees, including the 301 committee. And I've included in here all of her credentials. She has her degree from Northern Arizona University, her master's degree. Her bachelor's is from Grand Canyon. She does have her principal's certificates, as well as her teaching certificates, and she is a nationally board certified teacher as well as an Arizona master teacher. Mrs. Festadagel is involved in Lake Havasu City and at the county and state level. Her leadership experience outside of our district positions include Citizens for Havasu Schools, the Vision 2020 committees, Arizona Rural Schools Association board member, an AZ K-12 board member, and she has worked with the Social Studies and History Standards Development Committee at the state level. Community members describe Mrs. Daigle as an influential citizen with an innovative, creative mind. She is described by her supervisor as having the ability to not only work with a team, but also lead a team with many key stakeholders. She is able to balance her strong core family values with hard work and dedication. Mrs. Daigle has demonstrated ethical and innovative leadership as an administrator in the last 5 years. Her willingness to learn, her passion for our district and for education, and her commitment to the success of our students, staff, and community make her the ideal candidate for the Director of Personnel and Technology. And I'm honored to recommend that the board accept Mrs. Daigle as new director.
I'll entertain the motion now.
I make a motion to enthusiastically approve 4.1.
Second.
Discussion.
Okay, I have one question.
Yes.
So I know in your new role that you'll have opportunities for lots of professional development. I'm not really asking you the question, but I would like you to consider maybe venturing outside of the typical education world at least one time to explore something so it can offer you the opportunity to bring some balance in our district. And what I mean by that is having to do with whether it's the Cato Institute, or so you understand exactly what I'm saying, something that's outside the normal educational boundaries, because I think that will just open us up to get better candidates as we go along, new connections. So it wasn't really a question, it was a suggestion. But
I'd like to just bring up, because I'm not going to be around here much longer. It might be the only chance I get. I didn't tell my other members, but I had full confidence in your selection, because I think the business courses you taught give you a very strong foundation. I don't think people realize just how strong a foundation a series of business courses give someone. But I'd like you to think about and look into a 12-month, 30 days a month marketing program, because many of the teachers that are retiring from other districts, or in my favorite, Troops for Teachers, you either reach them when they're at that point, or you'll never reach them. You'll never get them. So they have to, like let's say basic UMA, you have to have a constant feed down there saying, we're looking for Troops for Teachers, we're looking for people that are getting out. Because if you don't, you're lost. Once they retire, they're into another career. That's all I got my shot in.
Thank you.
You've had a can or two of Bright Future beer, haven't you?
I have it in my house.
So that's a good start. I'm also very happy to see that your leadership positions are on here, because I think that the position that you're going into is a leadership position. If you want to intern at my business this summer, I'll teach you the tech side, inside out, forwards and backwards, but I think really what it's more about than knowing the tech is understanding how to lead the tech side of it. And I don't think anybody expects you to turn a screwdriver. But if you want to learn, I can teach you.
Thanks.
in your spare time.
Yes.
Right, and in my spare time.
Right. I know. We all have so much of it.
And I do think you're going to be a good fit based on that leadership background and the business background that you have in teaching. The language background as well. Knowing a second language may not seem like it translates to a whole lot in a leadership position, but it really does, because there's a lot of times where you are rephrasing and rephrasing and rephrasing to push information down. So I'm going to probably vote for you, and I will say now congratulations. So, any further discussion? Terry?
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Ellen Ward,
Yes.
Pat Rooney.
Yes.
Nicole Cohen.
Yes.
John Masden.
Enthusiastically, last vote yes.
Enthusiastically. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Say anything or introduce your guest.
This is my husband, Chris Daigle, who doesn't always come around school things, but I really, if you don't know, he runs the second largest manufacturing business in town. He's very proud of that, and as a businessman, we talk about these things a lot. I'm a lifelong educator, but understanding how the business world works and how human resources works is really important to me. And when this job opened, I sat down and spent a lot of time with his human resources manager. And that's something in our lives. he is a business professional, and that's what his degree is in. But that's something we've talked about our whole life. But as someone with an economics background, I really do think that's powerful in every decision that we make when we talk about the teacher shortage. I always come back to it through how an economist sees things. But I believe in this district. I love this district. He's a graduate of Lake Havasu High School. My daughter's a graduate of Lake Havasu High School. Both my kids have gone up through this system, and I love everything that we've always done. Both of my principals are here. So I am fully committed to this district and everything about it. So I hope to serve you all well.
Thank you.
I have a little book for you before you leave.
Thank you.
Because you love books.
Thank you. I know. I book friends.
The 5 Dysfunctions of a Teen.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
business book.
Lindsay
You know
Ewing,
it?
I've read it, absolutely.
I have that book
Yeah.
as well.
I did have one question. I don't mean just if you heard it. Have you read the book, The Peter Principle?
Yes.
Just checking.
Okay. Item 4.2, the personnel report. Mrs. Minor, is there anything in here that we need to discuss?
I believe, do we need to?
Well,
do we need to have a motion or not?
well, I'm starting with you.
Okay.
But actually, they can address the,
Well,
does it have
we're
to
gonna-
be on the floor?
We're going to put it on the floor first before we get into it.
Okay. I do believe we have Marnell Engstrom here that would like to address the board regarding her exception to policy.
Okay. And we'll put it on the floor, and then I've got a question for you.
Okay.
So give us 1 second. So
I
I'll
make a-
entertain a motion on 4.2.
I make a motion we approve 4.2 as presented.
Second.
Okay. So when we discuss these things, normally we do it in a planned executive session. So when you start talking in public, you're actually opening your personnel conversation up to the public and to the newspaper and so on. So just so you're aware.
I've ended up in the hospital last year and I have a lot of medical bills. And she was just diagnosed with liver disease. And there's a lot of medical bills that we're gonna have to deal with. And that's why I'm asking to get out of my contract, because I did find a job that I can make more money. So I'm asking that you will not have me pay the $1,000, if possible, because of that.
Do we have any discussion on that?
And I know that Corey has found somebody for my position already, because I've asked her about it. So they have found somebody already for it?
So I don't really know what's going on. I'm sorry, I don't have any background on this at all.
Okay,
so-
that's fine. Marnell signed a contract going into next year,
Right.
and she's resigning her position effective at the end of this school year because she's found a job in town that pays more, and she considers it to be a hardship based on the medical bills that she's accrued.
I guess I'm sorry, I'm not trying to.
She's looking for us to provide an exception.
I
to policy
understand
of
the $1,000 exception, but I'm trying to understand the medical bills because we cover medical.
Well, I tried to find a hepatologist in this area, but we have to go to the Mayo Clinic for that, and there's a lot of expenses. And I'm still paying expenses from ending up in the hospital last year. And debt collector on one of them has already contacted us, so that's the thing. And if I could make more money, I'm the breadwinner in the family, and I don't know how long she's gonna work because of her condition. I mean, she works in the district, and her principal's great. He understands it. Of course, it's Roger Berger, so, but I don't know how long she's gonna be working either. I just got a bill from the Mayo Clinic for like over $2,000. and she has to get scans like every 6 months. And she's been going through a lot of problems for like 6 months, and we just found out what it was, so that's my concern.
Are the scans not covered by insurance, or is it an out-of-network charge that you're getting? Because
No,
after-
it's in network, but it's still, there's a certain amount that you have to pay that insurance doesn't pay for.
Mayo doesn't cover. You have to pay extra for Mayo, above and beyond our insurance. They accept our insurance, but they put like a surcharge. We had a similar experience.
And it's been a really stressful year, so.
Do you mind me asking why you signed your contract just a month ago or so?
Because I thought that I was gonna stay, but then we started getting more bills and everything, and so I was looking at other places to see if, plus we both work second jobs as well in the district. Well, I won't be, but she'll still be, so, yeah.
Where did you get hired at?
In Parker,
So you moved to a different district?
yes. And they will give me all my years of service, so. And I can't let that opportunity go because of the expenses that we have medically.
So Denise, when did the contracts have to be signed for this year? You remember?
I don't remember the exact date. April,
I want to say
ish, 15th, I think it was. That's what I was going to say as well. That we had to have them returned to the personnel office.
April 15th? And let me ask you, when were you hired by Parker? When did they offer you a contract?
It was after I resigned and everything like that, so.
Did you apply down there prior to the resigning?
Yeah, I did.
And what was the date that you had applied down there?
I don't even know, actually.
Her request for exception is 4:30. Her
I've gotten offered, I've had a couple offers that are more money, but I'm taking the one in Parker.
Her date of resignation was 4:30 as well.
And
So I was looking.
Okay, and let me ask you, the medical thing, this has been ongoing?
Since we found out, yes.
And when did you find out?
It was December 5th.
Christmas Day.
Of 2017?
Well, I want to go to the $1,000, and I was in the district before we had that, and then it was put in because we had a really difficult time finding teachers when someone resigned at the last minute. And there had to be some incentive or disincentive for that not to happen. And so that's why the $1,000 was put in place. The key to me is that something we should look at is that the principal has not had a difficult time replacing this position. And I know that there are hardships. And to me, this is a hardship. Your hardship does not seem that it has presented a hardship for the school district or for the principal. And I think there are exceptions to policy, and I am open to supporting you. And I have not discussed this with Mrs. Minor. I pretty much firstly knew policy is policy, and it's normally with me it's black and white. But I don't know, Mrs. Minor has this put the district in hardship, or Mr. Yossi in a hardship position. I don't know that part of the story.
If I may comment, we have not filled all our elementary vacancy positions.
Okay.
And so while that particular position may have been filled,
Okay.
that would have been because we had an applicant that that was the right grade level. So we are still seeking elementary teachers.
Okay.
And it is a hardship for us for teachers to leave after they sign
Yes.
their contract.
And I know special ed is harder to fill, but I had asked her and she said she had found somebody that used to work in the district before a couple of years ago from Alaska. And that was yesterday that I talked to her about that.
How long have you worked with the district?
4 years.
Do we have a procedure for reviewing hardship cases?
We've actually, on the exception to policy form, we've actually got a spot on here that requests the governing board executive session, which was not checked off. But we've actually updated our form here in the past 6 months to a year to start to talk about hardships. This is a board level policy, which is why it's here. And so it goes to the principal, it goes to the district office where the finance director and the director of personnel both look at it. And again, the request is generally made now for an exception in an executive session and at the submittal point as opposed to going through the check boxes.
May I ask, and there may be no real answer, but why did you not want to hold this in an executive session, bring this up?
I didn't know, I just got the email from Denise and she said that you're meeting on this, so I said that I would be here. So I didn't know anything about, I don't know anything about the
It's on the
sessions or
It's-
anything like
It's a
that.
checkbox right there in your section of the form.
What does it say?
It says, I request to address the governing board in executive session.
Oh, I didn't, I honestly didn't know that I checked that.
It's not, you didn't check it.
Okay,
You didn't check it, and that's why we're talking about it in an open session, which is.
Yeah, and I just was telling Jamie I don't want to leave the district, because I've worked with Jamie, so we were talking on here. But I don't feel there's any other alternative, so, because of the expenses.
Well, it's definitely, I'm very sorry for both the medical issues that both of you are going through. I'm confused as to how Parker could be offering so much more that would make that worth a commute, but that's not my call to make. But in my opinion, and I've had this discussion before it ever came up as an issue, exceptions to policies, in my mind, are reserved for people who have to up and leave. And I can think of a few people that have for family emergencies, but they have moved out of the area. I sympathize with your struggle, but I'm also surprised that if you have medical issues that you would be giving up your insurance.
Well, that's another thing I'm gonna have to pay for Cobra, you know, for
I'm
and that's
just
gonna be
sure.
an expense as well, because I just got all the
I hope you
information on
factored all
that.
that into
Yeah,
your decision.
so, that's another thing.
Well, and
Because I've looked into that as well, so.
I guess what kind of makes it difficult on us is that you have a personal financial situation, and we have a policy. And generally speaking, while employers should always be cognizant of the fact that there's a personal situation that doesn't necessarily have a bearing on pay or employment situations or on company policies. And so I'm kind of torn because I really want to help you out because I understand what that 8 ball looks like. I've been there a couple of times in my life and I know what that looks like. But I also understand that from the business owner perspective, I also understand that this can be a very, very tough thing to start making exceptions to policy. And so I'm torn. I don't know. I don't know really which way to go. I want to help you, but I also understand that we have a school with staff, and while your position may have been taken care of because of a very unique situation, there's still an expense in replacing a position, whether that expense happens over a short period of days or over a period of 2 or 3 months to find a replacement for a position. There's still an expense to replacing a position inside of a company, whether it's an immediate or not. There's still that cost. So
My concern is, what's the purpose of the contract? The purpose of the contract is to protect two parties. One, it's to protect the district. In other words, when we give you a contract and you sign it, we say that we're going to meet these obligations. We tell you that. That's right up front. We're going to do that. We're bound by that. The flip side of that is the employee signs the contract. They have the security of the job. That now, once that's signed, the district's going to offer them a job. And then we expect certain things to happen during that. And, I guess, and then all of a sudden you get into the exception game. And when you get into that, then you have no policy. You govern by exception. And everyone's going to have a good reason. But, you waited until, I guess, April 15th, which is rather close to the end of the year, to sign the thing. This has been an ongoing thing. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about, if all of a sudden the school year started and we said, look, we can't offer you a job, we miscalculated it. We're not trying to be mean to you or whatever, but we miscalculated. You don't have a job. You could fall back on that contract and say, hey, you do owe me something here. And if it went to court, they would enforce that. So my position is that the contract protects the district and protects the employee. And that if we're not willing to do that, let's don't have contracts. And I don't know of any employee who would agree to something like that. I know I wouldn't. So, I don't mean to be mean-spirited. I sympathize with your problem, but it's been an ongoing problem. And the contract didn't have to be signed. And then you say you were offered the job on 4/30? Was that
I
it?
believe so.
15. So really, there had to be some contact before that date.
I talked to, I think I talked to Denise, I don't know when it was, you have emails from me, I think, that I was discussing it with. About, I signed my contract and I asked her, and she said that the board had met already. So, I did talk to her about that. But she had said that the board had met on the contract.
Right, that you had also already signed.
Yeah. But I had talked to her right, immediately after that, so.
The thing is I can feel that the board here is very sympathetic, and even we want to find a way to do this, but at this point, if I can say this right, it ends up not being about you. Our decision ends up being about the next person who wants to get out of his contract. And if this happens and we let you out of your contract and you don't have to pay the $1,000, then somebody else out there knows that, and it's just going to move forward. Pat's point is right, John's point is just right on. It's about the future and other employees, and what we do here today is going to determine what other employees feel that is fair and what they're able to do. And then that puts the district in a crisis situation. So I just hope you understand that.
I'll tell you where my problem is, and I look at this from a totally different point of view. You made a decision to accept a contract at Parker. Well, part of making that decision was considering all the costs you had to incur. And it really doesn't become the board's responsibility to worry about that $1,000. That $1,000 is your responsibility. And when you agreed to accept a contract with another district, you had to figure in the opportunity costs of losing that $1,000. If you didn't, then you made an error in judgment. It has nothing to do with what the school board's doing. It was your judgment to take that loss. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's a business decision. And it's a decision you made. And now you're asking us to pay for a decision you made.
Any further discussion? Any amendments, changes to the motion on 4.2? The motion on 4.2 would accept the personnel report as presented, which would deny the exception to policy.
I make a motion to accept 4.2 as listed.
It's already on the
I
floor.
already made the motion.
Oh, it is? Okay.
So, hearing none, I'll ask Terry for the vote, please.
Pat Rooney,
Okay, we're making, the motion is
The
not to
motion is
accept.
to approve the personnel report as presented.
Personnel.
Which means that you do not accept the exception.
Yes.
So, okay.
Ellen Ward,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes. Okay, item 4.3 is the approval of a new job description for security guard. Mrs. Minor?
Mr. President and members of the board, it is recommended that the governing board approve the final draft of the job description for security guard. The proposed minimum maximum salary range for initial placement for this position is $14 and $17.50 respectively. The previous initial placement salary was a flat rate of $10.50. This is an updated job description based on the needs of the district to assist with the daily operations of the high school to maintain the security and safety of students, faculty, and staff. This draft is recommended by the Personnel Department.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on 4.3.
I make a motion that we approve 4.3.
Second.
And I have a question. How was it arrived at that this placement of $14 to $17.50? We're going for $10.50, I guess, on the board.
Sure. We took a look at several different school districts and what they were paying their security guards as well as their job descriptions because we felt that it was necessary to bolster what our expectations were for a security guard at the high school, and with that comes an increase in pay.
Okay. And have you had trouble getting security guards, or is that a position that turns over quite a bit?
I would say it turns over, yeah, based on what our job description is now and what we're paying them now, yes.
Now,
And
do we have just security? Do we have security? We have security guards at the high school, right?
Correct.
Do we have them at the junior high?
we do not. And I do want to point out, right now, our security guards are only working 30 hours a week, so they are staggered to cover the time frame of the high school. This is going to put them at 40 hours a week, so they'll be full-time. So we'll be fully staffed with 4 security guards on a regular basis.
And is that, you have 4 at the high school?
Currently, we do at 30 hours apiece.
Okay.
So that they may not all 4 be on duty at the same time.
Right.
Currently, right.
Okay.
I have some concerns about the job description. Is this a typical job description at other high schools in the state? Is that how you?
I pulled several from high schools and colleges. I looked at a broad spectrum. A lot of this I pulled from the Yuma School District as far as their security guards were concerned. So it's a cross-section of several.
Okay. So I understand the high school now has a procedure where a security guard, I don't know, there's so many buildings, I don't know how this is pulled off, but observes students, checks for ID with strangers coming in,
I'm not sure, but I heard if you try to go to the, I think I might have read this on social media, I don't know. from a parent.
There's someone at the front gate.
It's somebody at the front
Or
gate.
you go into
the front gate.
administration.
Okay, the front gate, okay. So I'm all for that increased security. However, when I look at this, someone with a security guard background, a background in law enforcement, has a totally different attitude. My main concern is someone who has good judgment, takes his job seriously, goes out and mingles with students, gets to know students, finds the kids who are the loners. The kids, instead of having an authoritarian person who's had law enforcement background, which changes somebody. You're looking for the worst in human nature, and you can find it. But at a high school, the ones I'm used to, because that's what I'm the first one that was able to get a security guard, the kids like these people. They come up and talk to them. They tell them of their concerns that are going on, and that's how administration finds out that something is going on. This position to me makes me, it's not the person I would hire for this position. So I have a concern about that, bringing someone with that background. It has to be the right person. And the other thing I have, of course we want someone to be able to get emails and understand about emails, but to me I'm seeing one more person with the desk or access who thinks, okay, I'm going to have a desk and I'm going to be sitting there checking my emails all day, rather than going out and mingling with the kids and developing good relationships. That's just, when I read this, I don't like this person and I don't want him in my schools.
Well, I think, with what's been happening in our nation, at least in my estimation, and after talking with Mr. Becker, the hope is that we would find somebody that would have a combination of those skills, because I think it's important that, yes, they are able to mingle with the students, but I also feel like they need to be at a certain skill level that if there were a crisis at the high school, they would be able to be a part of being involved in that versus more of a passive person that I feel like we have right now.
Okay, and I don't know about right now, but just let me finish. The other thing that I'm concerned about is people with a law enforcement background. We expect students to, when they engage, especially if it's a former retired police officer, and the police officer expects the student to stop his behavior, not to argue with him, not to do this. And I think that's necessary. I think that's what police officers need to expect, that kind of respect. But if a student starts engaging with a former police officer or someone with a lot of security background, this person is very likely to not like that. And instead of diffusing the situation, it's likely to escalate. And with a lot of high school kids, there are mental health issues. People who have experience with kids know how to bring that down and not to end up arresting the kid. And I would err on the side of someone who likes kids, likes to deal with them, takes kids as they come and brings things down. And this person, as described in this job description, is not that person to me.
Kathy, you're making the same mistake we make throughout this country. You're in a zero-sum argument. Either this is a Gestapo agent or we sing Kumbaya. I was a cop. I know a lot of cops became resource officers. They're as compassionate as anybody else. There's different situations when I'm on the street handling a drunk with a knife in his hand, or when I'm talking to a high school kid that's like my son. And I don't have to be a Nazi. I can socially react with that child. You can't assume because somebody's been trained to be a police officer that they have no compassion. That's just a bad assumption.
I'm not assuming that. As a matter of fact, if you were to be able to hire former law enforcement people, retired police officers, I would have a lot more confidence. But at this salary, more likely you're going to have people who have some kind of security background, maybe up at Laughlin or who knows where. And when they read this and they apply for the job, they're seeing item number 2 or requirement, and they're not. Yes, later on the ability to get along with kids is there, and then the second part is the training, the expectation during the interview for someone to say, this is how it's going to be, and this is our expectation. I know from experience that gets dropped along the way, especially as you change principals and whatever, and then you end up with a student who's arrested, and he ends up the school ends up with a lawsuit or whatever, and I just am not comfortable with
Well, every
this.
effective resource officer I have known interacted daily with all the students, but also their police background gave them the structure to say, that's it. And kids need that. They need someone there who'll say, stop right now.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. The school resource officer or a principal is that person. This is not that person who becomes part of the discipline of the school. I don't agree with that.
I have a question. Denise, who hires these people? Who's in on the interview?
The high school.
Okay, so the on-site administrator hires the person.
Right.
It just seems to me that that's where this is discerned.
And this was sent to the high school and approved through
No,
the
I'm not
principal.
talking about this. I'm just talking about during the interview process, that's where, and the other people you have involved in the interview, which may be maybe the principal, maybe the school resource officer, maybe an assistant principal that deals with a lot of the discipline problems. That's what I would recommend. A lot of that is going to be discerned right there. And then after, if that person's bringing this person on staff, and there has to be a certain amount of training or interaction or whatever, that's part of the supervision. And that if this person isn't meeting that, then the person that hires them gives notice and says, this person's out of here. But, in the time that I was at the high school, we had a number of school resource officers. They were policemen. They were great with the kids. I mean, they got one up there right now that he just works well with kids. And so whether it's a person that is a former police officer or someone that comes in, actually someone that comes in that doesn't have that skill set, that training, I think that's where you're going to have more problems than anything. Because all of a sudden, I'm a security officer, and the thing can get accelerated.
That's what I mean.
Now, an example is, remember T?
Yeah.
I mean, what? He was worked in the cafeteria. He was the best cook we ever had over there. And then he became the security officer. I mean, was he trained for that? No. But whoever hired him realized that this guy is good on interacting with kids.
That's what I mean.
But to me, that's the role of the person that does the hiring, the principal.
Yeah. Can I share a little bit of background on how we got to this point? Because I think it would be important to know. We actually started the discussion about revising the job descriptions and the hours for the security at the high school back in October. So this was prior to anything happening in Florida or in Texas. And part of the conversation was, and I apologize for being disrespectful for individuals that may be in the position, but there wasn't the really strong relationships that were occurring. There was a lot of turnover in those positions. We had people who were physically incapable of intervening in a situation. And the people were telling me that kids are saying our security is a joke. Well, part of that was because of the entry-level position, and the people who are coming into that don't necessarily have a skill set. Even in terms of interacting with kids, their bodies on campus. And we had, as my observation at the high school, again, I apologize, but we have people who physically can't walk around, so they have to drive a cart. Not because it's a big campus, but because physically they can't walk around. And so the idea was that, first of all, that the high school needs more people, that more, it's so wide open. And then secondly, there needs to be people who have at least a skill set to recognize when something might be a threat, when something might be brewing, that when something might be an area where I need to call an administrator over, those kinds of things, while still being able to interact with kids. And so we started the conversation back with, and I think Jamie was a part of the conversation as well, with, how is this working? How are they paid for? What would happen if we did these things? And so this has been an evolution throughout. With the incident that occurred in Parkland, we suddenly changed some things about access to the campus. That was done after we've already began having this discussion about the amount of security and the quality of the security people that we're hiring. And so that we even may need to rethink how we assign, how we disperse as a principal. That's the principal's role to do that. But the evolution of this was because of the fact that we needed to be able to hire more high quality people who had some experience and who could assess situations because they've had some experience assessing situations and intervene if appropriate or recognize that they need to call for help. So that is the background on how we got to this point.
There was a big concern.
I have a question.
There was a big concern, I remember last
Yeah.
October,
Yeah.
that we didn't have security guards that could prevent a student
Right.
in the process of pummeling another student.
Right.
There was nobody to stop
And,
that.
and our principal and our SROs are the only ones that can go
Right.
out and break up fights. That's a problem.
Yes.
I have a question. When is the last time we as a district had a comprehensive security evaluation of all of our campuses?
I don't know when we've had one. We actually have that on our agenda for
Having
June 4th
said that,
with some other stuff.
You can
I'd like to
expect me
share.
to vote no on this because you don't know what this guy's duties are. You have no way of knowing what his duties are until you have a comprehensive security evaluation and know what you're going to do with this person, including and not excluding, are you going to allow him to carry a weapon? All of these things have to be discussed, and then when we write this job description, it has to define that person's job description. And we can't do that catch and catch can.
I'm not sure I understand. And I think perhaps the name security guard implies something different. This is really campus supervisor, campus security, as opposed to like a police officer type of a position.
As an employee, our policy would not allow him to carry him
Right.
or her.
I mean, that's
gun.
another whole, that's a completely different discussion, which actually I would like to talk about.
Please.
Yeah, so. But I don't want to divert from questions on this particular. This is just looking at existing security that we have and upgrading that to create a higher caliber and a more adaptable, not adaptable, that's not the word, but a more flexible way of using security so that we can ensure the safety of the campus.
What I'm saying is, without a comprehensive analysis, we're taking a person and putting them in place with this in place. And then next week, we're changing the access in 3 places and telling them now, your function is also to do this and this. 3 weeks later, we change something else. We say, now your function is to do this and this. We haven't established our security parameters for this person to operate inside of.
Well, does that have to be done before we hire, or can that be done in conversations with the police department? They come in and they assess the physical, the whole thing and see what needs to be done. Now,
It's already in the
whatever they
process.
decide
Yeah,
is going to change your job description.
A couple of thoughts here. First and foremost, I'd really like a security evaluation done outside of the local police department. I think that they do a very good job, but I think the more eyes you put on something, the better overall analysis you're going to get, and the better conclusions you can make on how to best secure something. When we talk about security guards, I've hired a few in my day. I ran bars and nightclubs in the city. And I've talked to all different sorts of people and had all different types of people apply for the job. If you can break up a fight on your campus, if you can take somebody who's being hostile, and it takes more than one person to remove somebody who's absolutely being hostile from a situation, you can't take them and remove them to a neutral area so that they can be addressed by police or higher authorities or those types of things. You have a problem who you're hiring to be your campus security. That person who's going to do that job description is also going to be the nicest person in the world to everybody else. That's who you're looking for as a hireable person. The job description must spell the rest out. It must, because if it doesn't, then they're going to say, well, it's not my job to go break up that fight, or it's not my job to remove this disruptive kid from class. That's not what you hired me for. I'm just eyes and ears. I'm not going to be moving people around or breaking up fights. I think it's disingenuous for us to say that if we were to hire somebody under this job description, that would not be adaptable into an overall security plan for a campus. And again, I think that campus is an overall conversation with more than one entity involved. And so I look at this and I see a job description that ups the ante a little bit on who we hire and the thought process behind it and some of the physical requirements to it. If you tell me that currently we don't require our people to assist in controlling classroom disturbances, detain students who have narcotics, tobacco, or alcohol-related infractions, model non-discriminatory practices in all activities, assist administrators in emergency and crisis situations, and just read the list here. These should already be requirements for this person. This doesn't make them a police officer. It doesn't give them law enforcement powers. They work at the pleasure and discretion of the administration.
I agree with that.
And so putting this in place, I think, is a good first step to improving the overall, how do we respond to things at Lake Havasu High School from where we are now.
Well, you know, the duties on that first one may confront or intervene as required until authorities arrive. I mean, to me,
Right.
that says everything. Now, you know, at one time, I was the security guard at the high school.
I remember.
You know, I just think if you hire a security guard and it says may confront or intervene, that's what I'm going to expect. They better be physically well enough to do that. I'm going to tell them that. And it used to be at the high school that the teachers would confront. I never ran into teachers that were afraid to go ahead and confront a problem. In fact, I was absolutely opposed to security because I think that the students in the community ought to know that the administrators and the teachers are actively involved in running the institution.
But the last teacher who did got fired.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if all of a sudden you're trying to control a situation, as a teacher, I'm not going to sit back and say, well, that's someone else's job. It's everyone's job to do that. As far as the institution's concerned.
My concern is, I'm the person thinking I'm going to apply for this job, and the first thing I see is the high school diploma or GED required fine, and then I look at my experience. Will that meet the bill there? I think the second thing should be an ability to establish and maintain effective working relationships with students. Or maybe that whole paragraph should be moved up there. The first thing they see is that, because otherwise this person applying for the job goes in thinking, oh, you know, it's just my law background, my law enforcement background, my security background, rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to be working with teenagers. Do I really, can I do that? And number two is, why does this person need to be able to use spreadsheets and database software. I mean, I know he maybe needs to look something up in the computer, but spreadsheets, the ability to maintain records and prepare written reports. I'm telling you, if you put that off on these people, that's going to be it's going to become a desk job. They're not going to be out circulating.
Cops have to write reports every single day.
When do they ever need to write a report?
Every day, cops write reports. Every single day, they have to write. If you can't write, you can't be a cop.
Well, I'm not talking about cops, I'm talking about the campus.
But what I'm saying is we're asking them to essentially assume a security role. If there's an incident, they're gonna need to be able to write it up. On the spot, they need to take notes, descriptions, whatever. I think this is fine. I think we're belaboring something that we really shouldn't.
Right.
And the only thing I would like to see is the 50 pounds. I would like to see that higher. Because I think that weeds out some maybe, and I don't know if there's an HR reason that you can't go to 75, but I've filled out applications where you had to be able to at least lift 75. You know?
Bag of cement is 90.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're dealing with
psychology side. But from what the research that she's been doing, as well as with some of the districts that she's been working with, is that the question was, do shooters choose targets that are weak? Okay, so is that the pattern with school? And so she shared with me this specific case in Florida where there was a nightclub shooting, where the shooter actually scoped out and selected the nightclub where they did not have armed security. However, she said that the interesting thing is that that has not necessarily been the case for the school shootings. In the school shootings, in the cases that they've analyzed, they know that there's at least a resource officer on campus who is armed, but in almost every case, that, and these are her words, is that the school or the students that are targeted are done so to prove a point by the person who's the perpetrator. And that they are not deterred by somebody who might be armed. And so the idea that in fact that's a deterrent, in typical cases schools are targeted specifically because of an issue with a teacher, with a student on the campus, or with the school itself for an action that they take. And so those were part of the discussions that we had. Like I said, we talked for quite a while yesterday about all of the big pieces that apply. And then the other thing is the risk versus liability. You know, what are some of the situations she shared about I guess it was the chief in Prescott Valley who lost his gun for 4 days. So left it in a library restroom. And those are the things that happen. And so because people are human. And so, I mean, there's a lot of conversation, but the idea that we would start with a discussion about comprehensive plan and then work it through to a point where we have a specific plan that would then go forward to be presented for, should everybody agree to it, to our insurance carrier. That seemed like a really good way to approach it.
Jamie, does the high school still do, I don't want to call it a program, but give the teachers a list of all of their students at the beginning of the year and ask them to evaluate, you know, does this student have friends?
Yes.
Is this student, we still do that?
Yeah, so we now actually do it a little bit differently. We ask the students, do they feel connected to an adult or to a teacher on campus? And so we work it backward. Because before we were asking if the teachers felt connected to the kids, which really didn't matter because I can feel connected to you all day long, but if you don't feel connected back. So we ask the kids if they feel connected, and then we find out who doesn't feel connected, and we work to develop relationships with them.
So I'm glad that's still going on, because intervening at that level, finding the kids who can't deal with life and all things life throws them, is good to identify those kids.
We're slowly moving further into the weeds here.
Yeah.
We're talking about a job description.
That's part, I know, but that's still part of the safety.
So I'm going to call the
plan.
question.
Okay.
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
No.
Ellen Ward,
No.
John Masden,
Yes. Okay. Announcements, future meeting date, next regularly scheduled meeting is June 19th at 6 p.m. Obviously, there's graduation tonight, if you're not so aware. And with that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion, we adjourn. Second.
In stereo, please.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Ellen Ward,
Yes.
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
John Masden.
Yes, we are adjourned.
So if I may